So I was sitting down today talking about a bunch of different baits that I've been throwing a lot recently, and one thing that I forgot to talk about is where fish go and where I'm going to throw these baits in the month of November, December. Okay, that's bigger than any of the baits you're throwing. If you're not throwing them around fish, you're not going to catch fish, right? You could be throwing the wrong bait, but if you're around fish, you're probably still going to get bit. So none of the tips that I talk about actually help unless you know where to go. So let's talk about where fish are going to go in November, December, and January, right? What's the key is going to be not the swim bait, but the style bait. Because as winter starts to approach, fish are going to set up in places where food is coming to them. This is why we see bridges being so popular this time of year, because there's current and there's always bait fish moving through there. So there's fish set up there because they're lazier, whether it be smallmouth, spotted bass, or largemouth. Fish are going to relate to bait so much more than they ever do because they don't need to feed a lot. But when they do, they don't want to have to go out of the way to get it. And so you have to look at places where fish are going to have food coming to them. And so to do that, you kind of have to understand the bait fish a little bit. And it depends on what kind of a fishery you're on, but one thing I look for is current and a little bit deeper water. As it gets cooler, these fish are kind of starting to get a little bit deeper, as we've probably all started to figure out. Water temp here in North Carolina is like 60, 58, 60 degrees. Up north, it's like 40. You know, I left PA to come down here because my water was starting to get to that point where I was afraid to start launching my boat because we were starting to have snow flurries. And so what you get is those fish up north, they go deeper just like they do everywhere else. So deeper is key. They set up on some of the deepest offshore structure that you're gonna have. Great Lakes, a lot of times that's 20 to 40 feet. You know, spotted bass in clear lakes, it's generally around 50, 60 to 40, 30 to 60. They get deeper on some of these clear reservoirs. Reservoirs like Gunnersville, Tennessee River chain, deepest might be 20, 25. In that 15 to 20. They just get out a little bit deeper, but they're on places where bait fish are going to frequent. So that's going to be the biggest key to offshore structure this time of year. And this is whether you're on a lake that has a lot of docks, this is on a grass lake. Look for where the bait fish are going to want to go or where they're going to frequent. So if you're up north on a grass fishery or even down south on a grass fishery, look for the deepest grass you can find. That's going to be key because those fish are going to want to follow that bait. And the bluegills, the crappie, perch, they're going to want to get deeper. So they're going to go to the deepest available grass. So that's where I'm going to target. I'm not going to go to the super shallow stuff because those fish just aren't going to be there because there's no food coming to them there. If I'm on a lake that has a lot of docks, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to find those docks that have pinch points, that have points, that have some reason that current is pushing through there. And it might just be as simple as, okay, today the wind is blowing into these docks. I bet you the bait fish is going to push with the wind up against these docks. Things like that nature. Think about where the bait fish are going to go. Again, bridges, current coming through. There doesn't necessarily have to be a bridge there for current to come through. If there's a stretch of the lake that necks down, that's going to be a place that those bait fish are going to have to funnel through. So those fish are going to set up there just because they know at some point throughout the day, might be random, those bait fish are going to come to them. You know, if you're on a herring fishery, those fish set out in the mouths of those pockets and in those ditches because the herring like to go to the back at night, and then they leave in the morning. And so they'll just follow them in and follow them out. And that might be a key to a lot of the lakes that you're on. If your lake has a lot of bait fish, idle around. Use your 2D on your hummingbirds, your garmins, your Lawrences. Find where the bait is. Figure out what area of the lake those bait are using because a lot of times those fish will just follow right with those groups of bait. So following that bait is going to be key. And if you're on a deeper, clearer body of water with less structure, that's what those fish are going to do. They're going to get underneath that bait and they're just going to follow that bait. So use your 2D and figure out where the bait is. You know, a lot of times those fish will be in like 20, 30 feet. So you can get right over top of them, hit them with a jigging spoon, a jigging rap, that kind of deal. So that's what you have to think about is where bait fish are going to frequent on your specific lake. Again, up north, deeper grass, deeper docks, something that has current on it. That's where it's going to be key. Down south, it's going to be areas in the lake that the bait is at. And it might be different every single day. You might have to get on pad and look for areas with bait. So things to key in on, loons, because loons can dive up to like 50 feet. So loons, seagulls, areas that have birds present is going to be key because that's going to show you where the bait is at. If not, use your electronics. And you can use even super simple electronics, even basic down imaging will tell you where the bait fish are at. And then the deepest available cover in those areas is probably going to be key. So if you're on the Great Lakes, finding rock piles and shipwrecks and stuff that's in 20 plus feet, 20 to 40, 60 feet. You know, I really don't fish for bass much past 45. It seems like 45 is kind of my limit. There are places where you can catch them deeper than that, but 45 and less. And so that's a great way to eliminate most of your lake, is just take them out, figure out, if you live on Guntersville and the grass only grows to like 12 feet, if that, maybe 10 feet, just put a highlight around your map. You can even go on Navionics online and look at it on your phone, or just go on your graph and look at 10 feet and find the areas that are deepest or closest to that deep water, and then get on that channel and look for that deepest grass, and that's how you're gonna find those fish. So keep some of the baits that we talked about in your hand. Look for those deepest areas that's gonna have bait fish frequenting it, the deepest available cover in your lake. Figure out the areas of your lake that have bait, and that's how you're gonna catch more bass. So please subscribe to the channel. I hope you guys really enjoyed today's video. God bless every single one of you, and I hope to see you in the next video.